Oh,
Hi,
This
hi,
meeting is being recorded.
hi, everyone, and welcome to Terf Talk Down Under. I'm Ange, and we've got Sue with us today. Hi, Sue.
hi, Ange. How are you?
Yeah, good, good. It's been a busy week, hasn't it? Christmas and
Really
everything.
good. Yes, with
Mm,
Christmas. Yeah, and then New Year's coming up. Whole
yep.
new year, 2023, year of the turf.
Yes. Yes. Year of the Turf. But
Yep.
we've had a bit of big news this week. A bit of a Christmas present, actually. Dr. Telfer, the director of the gender clinic in Melbourne, is taking a leave of absence of about 6 months from her role as the head of the gender clinic. And she's been moved to a different part of the Royal Children's Hospital. And, we're speculating as to why that might be happening,
So,
considering everything that's going on with the Tavistock and overseas.
so she's not like taking leave. She's just going to a new department for 6 months.
Yeah, they've put someone else in charge for 6 months. So she's still within the hospital and she's still seeing some of her patients privately. But yeah, they've moved her aside for a bit. Now,
Okay.
normally things like that happen, when there's an inquiry or something like that, or there's
Yeah,
some
that's right.
investigation into that. I mean, this is all speculation, but it's
Yeah.
really interesting in light of, all the recent research into the impact of the affirmation model on kids.
Yeah.
And, and I've been wondering personally because Daniel Andrews in Victoria has been pushing the affirmation model so hard, and he's 110% behind Michelle Telfer. So I'm wondering if there is some sort of investigation into or some recommendation that maybe the affirmation only model is not good, how that impacts on the Labor government who has pushed it through
Yeah.
with no no real input from anyone except trans orgs.
It makes you wonder though, because they could still have an inquiry and have her in her position. The fact
They
that
could.
she's been moved away for 6 months may indicate that maybe something's a bit wrong with her,
Not
as
sure.
in investigating her.
Yeah, but it's just really interesting actually, and,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd like to know.
Do you know who's taking a place?
I should, but no, I don't have it in front of me,
Oh,
but yeah,
okay.
someone who's within, RCH now, so,
Oh,
mm,
well, that is
yeah,
interesting. So
it's
what's
good
the
news
space? Yeah.
'cause well,
Yes.
they've just opened there's over 30, satellite gender clinics in Melbourne, all based on the Royal Children's Hospital, and the Royal Children's Hospital clinic is based on the Tavistock. And so
Yeah.
if they change from an affirmation model, that has a flow on effect through all these other clinics. Now, all these clinics are state government funded as well. So, it's really interesting. We'll see what happens there. So that's one to watch.
Does Victoria have the most clinics? 30 is a
I think
lot.
so. Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're in all the regional centres as well. So
It's just crazy.
it is. It is.
To
And
have 30.
they don't keep statistics on, once a child's gone through the process and gone into the adult clinic, they don't keep statistics on their outcomes either. So
No, I wonder if
yeah,
that's on purpose.
yeah, I reckon. Just like they don't keep statistics on men in women's jails, they have them listed as women, even if they're sex offenders. So, oh,
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
in Melbourne, of course, yeah, the Melbourne Recital Centre, a very prestigious music, mostly music place, has putting on a teddy bears picnic for children from toddler, preschoolers basically, and they're to bring a teddy bear. And the story that they're telling at this teddy bears picnic is about a little bear that was born in the wrong body.
That is so
So
sad.
yeah, and it's part of the Midsummer Festival, which is traditionally a gay and lesbian event that's now been taken over by the TQ plus. Yeah, and so yeah, it's like aimed specifically at small children, introducing the notion of a gender identity and the concept of being born in the wrong body.
Well, how can anyone think that's not grooming? You're using children's toys to push it.
Yeah,
It is grooming.
it is grooming.
It's a disgrace. It really is a disgrace.
Mm. And it's
Mm.
there's all sorts of things associated with Midsummer, which are for adults because sexuality is an adult concept,
Yeah.
and the fact that they're having this event for small children as part of that
Mm.
festival, just it doesn't sit right.
I wonder if you know which that brand that had the bondage teddies. Maybe they saw that and thought, "Oh, that's a
Balenciaga.
great idea."
Yeah, Gucci's got it, Balenciaga's got it. Like, there's some real dodgy stuff out there at the moment. Oh,
Jeez, it's so
oh
sick.
no.
It really
Yep.
is.
Oh, it
What
is.
do you do? This is the world we're living in at the moment.
It is.
How any adult can say that that's not grooming and that it's appropriate for children. There's something wrong with the adult.
And prestigious places and people are involved in these things, and the state government's funding most of them, so it legitimizes stuff that is really uncomfortable.
Yeah. It's so
Yeah.
frustrating that taxpayers are paying for it.
Yeah, we are.
It's
Yeah,
just,
and don't let me get started on schools.
oh, it keeps
um,
getting worse and worse.
yeah. In other news, Scotland's had self ID go through, and the women over there, mostly women, have you know kicked up their heels about it. They have protested. They had held a vigil outside Scottish Parliament. And it was really good to see. And I'm so disappointed for everyone in Scotland because we know how that's going to be for them. I mean, we've had self ID here in Melbourne for 3 years. And because of all the lockdowns, it's only in the last 12 months we've started to see the impact of gender
Mm,
identity.
mm.
And everywhere you go, there is a trans identified person, everywhere.
And even with the amendments that they had to consider, and to say no to the safeguarding amendments, and you just think
Mm.
it's just, and even Nicola Sturgeon, she's even admitted that predatory men will take on the identity of women. So we're being sacrificed. Women are being sacrificed
Yeah.
in Scotland.
Yep.
And you just
And in
think,
Queensland.
yes, in Queensland and Victoria.
Yeah. It was really interesting to note that the pushback in Scotland was huge because their consultation process was in the media. That women had a chance to organise and make submissions, whereas
Yeah.
in Australia these self ID bills are pushed through by stealth, and they
Mm,
only consult with transgender organisations, whereas in
mm,
Scotland they dismissed all the other women's orgs that contacted them, but they still, they were still reported on. They were still, acknowledged by the media. And it's
mm.
been really interesting to watch what's happening in Queensland, where the general public is completely oblivious to their women's rights being completely stripped away, as opposed to Scotland, where women are waking up and they're outraged.
I think also governments have an obligation. Like if you look at people in old aged care facilities, if their family comes along, takes them out for an outing, they go to the local, shopping centre or whatever, use a toilet, they see a man in a
Mm.
short dress, and they get a fright when they
Mm.
come out the toilet. They say something. We've seen how aggressive they can be. They
Mm.
need to be prepared. Everyone needs to be prepared, because if it's legal and people don't know it, and then confrontational because they see a man in a woman's space, what about safeguarding them by telling them that this is now
Mm.
what is going on and this is what you may encounter? Because I think even though I know what's going on, if I came out of a toilet and saw someone like, say, Roxy Tickle or whatever,
Mm.
I would still, but I would try and not get a shock because I know the aggression, but these people are going to be completely unaware.
Mm. And
So,
what we're noticing in Victoria is that people don't know that they've got no rights anymore until it happens to them. So a lady contacted me, and she knew someone who was at an inner city pool with their daughter in the toilets getting changed, and a man came in, stripped off in the ladies' bathroom, and put his bathers on and went out, fully naked. And she
mhm,
was so taken aback. She went to the counter and said, there was just a man in the women's toilets, and they identified the person, and the staff said, no, that's a trans woman, and they're perfectly legally entitled to be in that toilet. And this woman was like, what? And that was her introduction to gender identity. Because it had always been an abstract concept to her until it affected her personally. And what we're finding here in Victoria is more and more and more people are impacted by it personally. Their work colleagues, they're at a public toilet, they're at a public change room, because it's not some tiny little portion of the population anymore. It's an ever-growing portion of the population demanding even more rights and getting more emboldened.
Yeah. Did you see that article? It was New South Wales with the Dawn Fraser swimming pool, the public pool, and there was an influencer there, and she's non-binary.
Oh,
and
yes, I
she
did.
went, and my cousin from Canada saw the article, and he said, well, we don't have that problem in Canada. And I went, what do you mean? He said, well, wherever a man can go without a shirt, a woman who identifies as a male or non-binary can be topless. So he said that he doesn't see a lot of topless women around. He did see one woman sitting in a cafe amongst all the diners there, and she was sitting there topless. So if a man can go shirtless, a woman can go topless no matter where. So walk down the street. And you just think, so I wonder if that's going to come in. I don't want to be shopping with half-naked people. Who wants to look at them?
Well, it'd be liberating if women weren't viewed differently to men.
Yeah.
You know, if a woman's chest was exactly the same as a man's chest and not viewed as a sexual thing, it'd be great.
Yeah, that's
I'd be
right.
walking around in topless too. But the way that women are viewed, and the way that unhealthy people view women's bodies, it's not good. It's not good for anyone.
Yeah. No, it's just, and Dawn Fraser, this the management of the pool apologised to this woman.
Yeah, of course.
And said they'd be more inclusive. And you think, oh God.
And the non-binary attention seeker got attention, which is what she wanted.
Yeah. But but if a woman did it, was told to cover up, be a different story, wouldn't it? Be indecent exposure. But because someone, it's gone, well, way too far now. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is people are going to claim trans identity and do like the WeSpa thing, where they're going to say, oh, I'm trans, as an excuse to justify all sorts of things, you know, going into change rooms and into, you know, toilets and things, and getting their stuff out deliberately to shock women, and then claim, oh, but I'm transgender, I'm just getting changed. It's happening already.
Yeah, there was an article from overseas, I think it was America, where a guy had put cameras in a female, I can't remember if it was toilets or changing rooms. And then when he was arrested, he claimed he was a woman. So that's all they have to do now, claim they're a woman. But I don't know how you'd get off if you're installing recording devices. So,
and I've just noticed in the last couple of weeks, there's been so many female sex offenders reported in the media, both in the print media and even on Channel 7, you know, oh, this woman is wanted for sex offenders. And you look at the picture and you know it's not a woman. And they just face lying to your face.
Yeah. So women are becoming more predatory.
Yeah. Oh, gee. What other news have we got? Oh, sorry. Oh, there was an interesting article in The Age the other day, once again, about Melbourne. Sorry, I'm in Melbourne. But it was about how right-wing, severe, Nazis, like people who call themselves Nazis, like the extreme right-wingers, they were talking about how they are using LGBT events to both recruit, say, you know, getting pictures, getting the things that we see online of, you know, people in the TQ acting dodgy, like adult babies and stuff, and using that to recruit younger people, but also are turning up to, you know, events either like ran by the LGBT community or events like our Terf events, like women's protests. And these right-wingers are using these events to try and kick off conflict with anti-fascists. And this article in The Age acknowledged it. And so it was interesting because obviously, you know, we've got Kelly J's tour coming up, and there's been conflict within gender critical and within the radical feminists and within everybody about, this hands across the aisle and whether we can work together left and right, and who is too far right, who is too far left. And there's also been a sort of a bubbling tension building in anticipation, because because of the escalating violence from trans rights activists who are often anti-fascists, particularly in Melbourne. We've had women who've had broken bones. We've had women assaulted in Melbourne just for being TERFs. So there's tension around the threat of violence from the trans rights activists. But then now there's this other tension about the fact that neo-Nazis, who are also violent men, are threatening to turn up to our events. And what do we do about it as women?
So are they recruiting the TIQA plus?
No, they're using the TIQA to recruit. So, they're saying that they're groomers. They're saying if you don't want your children to be trans, join us, and things like that. They're extremists.
And that's the worry, because imagine saying to a neo-Nazi or one of the Proud Boys, insisting they use pronouns or acknowledging that a male is a woman. And that's the big fear, is if they had just come out and identified as whoever they wanted to be and left our rights alone. But now, because the pendulum has swung so far, it will swing back.
That's right.
And they won't be able to come out because there'll be too many people that will just they'll have a gutful, and that's it. And it will just swing all the way back.
And because the acronym drags the LGB into it, the people who are going to feel it most are lesbians, gay men, and bisexual people. It's just a nightmare. And look, I honestly don't know what the solution is, but I think as women, that we have to not take responsibility for what men do, and that if men want to fight with each other and use us as a human shield, we say no to both sides. So you can't use us as a human shield. We're not a political football. We're here for women's rights and women's rights only. And we can't fight off violent trans activists and fight off violent far right activists at the same time. And I don't think that we should be held responsible for what men do.
Yeah, exactly. And that happened at the drag queen event, didn't it, in Melbourne recently, where they were the Proud Boys or something were there?
The Proud Boys turned up to fight with Antifa. They didn't turn up to attack LGB people, TQ plus people. They turned up to fight with anti-fascists, because this is basically what you call a pissing comp between the far right and the far left, and women are stuck in the middle. And because a lot of us are left-wing women, we feel bad about it. We don't want them here. But what do we do about it? What can we personally do? I'm 5'1" and in my 50s. I'm not going to go up to a Proud Boy. I wouldn't even know what most of them look like anyway. I know I can identify a couple of them. I'm not going to go, oh, can you please get out of our protest? He's not here there to see us anyway. He's there to fight with the other blokes.
Well,
he's
they're
there to fight with
anyway, aren't they?
Yeah. So, I just think, but I just hope that women can sort of move beyond feeling responsible for what these men are doing. And saying, oh, we've got to do something. Why do we have to do something when men over here and men over here want to fight with each other, and they want to appropriate and make our rights? Like they want to, the left want to shut down Posey's protest, so that they say it's because they don't want the right wingers to be able to come, but they also don't want us to speak. And we've got to keep that in mind. We need to speak. Women have a right to speak up. And if we come together as women and say, look, we won't take shit from either side, this is about women, and keep the focus on us and not what we should be doing, because leave it to the men. That's what I think anyway. That's just my personal opinion. I don't speak to
anybody. Get blamed for the neo-Nazis, the way they behave, and they go, oh, well, the women are, have gone extreme right now, and this is who they're mixing with. So we also get the blame for the Proud Boys and people like that. So
women always get the blame.
Yeah. But who'd want to get a neo-Nazi offside? So,
I've done it.
oh yeah,
I've done it a couple of times, yeah. They're just men's rights activists as far as I'm concerned,
yeah, they
like,
are, yeah. But
yeah,
I
and
mean,
yeah,
they're quite violent.
yes,
So, insisting that they use pronouns to acknowledge that a man is a woman or a woman is a man, they're the wrong people.
mm,
They are the wrong people to get offside,
mm,
and it's really quite sad. They're going to implode,
mm,
just like the Greens
yeah,
are doing.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, but it was an interesting article actually, acknowledging that that the right are using the sort of libs of TikTok side of the LGBTQ acronym to recruit.
Wow.
Yeah,
Gee,
and it makes sense.
yeah, we can't
But
win.
no, they're genuine. They're genuinely homophobic, bigoted.
Yeah,
They're extremist as much as the trans rights activists are the opposite with their no boundaries. Anything goes. So they're
and
just too extreme.
here are we saying anyone can identify as whatever they want, but you're not taking our rights from us.
Yeah,
It's just gone too far. But
and yeah, and of course the media are reporting about what men are doing, but they're not reporting about what gay men and lesbians are saying about it. They're not
yeah.
reporting about what women are saying about it. They're reporting about the men.
Do you think the media in Australia is a lot worse than the media overseas? It just seems we get nothing reported on
Yes,
here.
yes, at the moment. But I think the bubble's about to burst.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's
When
about
when
time.
everything when the things in with the Tavistock, and because people are hearing through social media what's actually happening.
Yeah,
And as more, of the AGP side of the trans brigade, as they take on more of a public face, I'm noticing people who 2 years ago would not have had a conversation with me on this issue are now
mm.
saying to me, look, I've come to realise that you're probably right, and good on you, So.
So did they apologise?
Well, no, nobody ever apologises. They say, "Oh, you're not a bigot after all."
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's sort of an apology.
Yeah. Oh, look, I don't. If someone thinks I'm a nasty old bigot, then not gonna. I don't care. I could have known them for 40 years. If they really think that I'm a horrible transphobic person that wishes harm on transgender people, then they don't know me at all. So I don't care what they think.
And that's a sad part, is I don't know anyone that's transphobic. It's just all
Yeah.
about keeping our rights,
But
safeguarding children,
I
having
was
our
saying,
safe places.
yeah. I was saying before we started recording that I've have trans people come into my inbox to abuse me, and we end off having a good conversation that can go on for weeks and months because we're on the same page on a lot of these issues.
Yeah,
And people are shocked because they
yeah,
they have in their head that TERFs have these specific views, but that's just all rubbish made up by the gender crew. We're not
yeah,
these
that's right.
horrible demonic people.
And they don't listen that we're saying that predatory men will take advantage of being allowed into women's safe spaces. So if
And
they
they
can
are doing it.
yeah. Well, there's something in the media every day about predatory men saying they're women.
Yeah.
It's a perfect disguise for them. And they don't need to change anything about themselves. They just walk
Mhm.
in as they are and just say, I'm a woman. And you can't ask them for proof,
No.
like when it changes in Queensland, you're not going to ask to see the change on their birth certificate. Can you imagine?
You Yeah, they'll kick and scream and take it to the Human Rights Tribunal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So you can't ask them. So you just have to take it on face value that this man is a woman and that he can get changed along with women and children and expose himself. So it's every predator's dream.
I'm still haunted by the men that I've seen in crisis services because they don't look anything like women. You know, we're not talking about passing people. We're talking about people who look like men with breasts.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, but
I've genuinely, sorry.
they seem to think though that, when you see it on Twitter and stuff like that, and they're saying how amazing they look, and you think, no, you look like a man.
Mm. The genuinely dysphoric, trans person, a person who has genuine dysphoria, wouldn't want to be in a room full of women talking about rape or domestic violence or something like that, because that would trigger their dysphoria, because their experience, it would be so different to ours as women. So they
Yeah,
just wouldn't be interested in going into that place. They'd have a
yeah,
private counsellor, or they'd go to a trans-specific group.
yeah,
The
because they've got special
only
needs.
Yeah, the only people that would be interested in being in a women's group would be a man who gets off on it. That's the only
Yeah,
thing that I think, or who gets off on the validation of being accepted into a group where women talk about private personal things and talk about their vulnerability. So
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. I've met a lot of trans people in my life, and I don't know one, dysphoric trans person who would actually go to a women only place. Only the AGPs.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr.
Mm.
Menno, Mr. Menno?
Yeah.
Yeah, he put out a really good video about maybe a week ago about how he said that he was on the trans side initially. And then when
Mm.
he started looking at it, it became Team Terf. And it goes
Yeah.
for about half an hour. It's really interesting. He goes into the genuine trans with the dysphoria
Yep.
and how, being intact really bothers them because
Mm.
it's a constant reminder and it really does their head in. But we've got
Mm.
men that have female partners, don't want to get surgery. And, it's obvious that they're AGPs.
Yep.
And,
Ugh.
and he said something like 75%, and that was from Ray Blanchard and another guy. They said 75% of men claiming they're women these days are AGP. So,
And all
yeah,
the girls are the ones that have got dysphoria, the ones identifying as men, and they're getting their body parts chopped off. So a
yeah,
man doesn't have to change anything about himself. He can even have a full beard and look exactly like a man. But
yeah,
girls have their bits removed, or they're not proper trans.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, once again, yeah. Oh, it's in the next 10, 20 years, my God, I hope I'm still around to see all these politicians that have backed it. They're going, what a legacy,
Mm.
just
And there's
one
no
person can
reconstruction.
do
Yeah, there's
it.
no reconstruction for these girls. They've had so much tissue removed that you can't reconstruct a flat chest.
God, that's terrible.
Oh, it's just awful. Um, Hey, the other news that we have is relative to your experiences as a former member of the Animal Justice Party,
Yeah.
and yeah, we were going to talk a little bit about that. So, do you want to quickly go over why you left Animal Justice Party, and also what happened in the recent Victorian election?
Yes. In April last year, myself and two other Queenslanders were running in the federal election as Animal Justice Party candidates. And the AJP didn't have a position on gender ideology at the time. And myself and Linda McCarthy, she, on her private page, Facebook page, shared a couple of news articles based on the swimming issue. And I liked a couple of the articles, and they were mainstream articles, and they were very sensitive. So there was nothing transphobic in them. And we got called before the committee, a 3.5-hour meeting. We got attacked. They lied, basically said we agreed to resign. We resigned because we couldn't represent a party that was captured by this ideology. And yeah, so we left in 3 weeks before the election, and we found out during that time that there was a man that was behind this and what was being done to us, Andy Medic from Victoria, who's been in or was in Parliament for 4 years. And he did quite a few good things for animals, but he was completely entrenched in the trans issue, and it became the Trans Party, where we were always told it's not about human issues. We had positions on human issues and policies on animals and nature. And, we're told focus on the animals, but if you're anti-medic, if you're in Victoria, no, you could focus on the trans issue. But anyway, he didn't like the fact that Linda posted these articles and that I simply liked it. I'd never made a comment. I'd never shared anything on social media, and I got crucified for it. So, so that's how we became more involved, because what happened, because I was fairly new, I went to the IWD Brisbane, me, Angie, and one day we went along to a talk. That's where we met you, Angie.
Yep.
And I listened to what was going on. I didn't get offended. I just was really interested in the women's stories, thought it made common sense. The AJP didn't have a position. We were hoping that because it's a party mostly of women, that we could stand by women and protecting their rights eventually. But that's not the case. So women's rights with the Animal Justice Party was thrown out of the window. So Andy Medic, apparently he was wanted us out of the party. We didn't know that until after we resigned. But they made a written apology for the damage that we had done to to trans people, their family and friends, for all the damage we had done through our nasty transphobic bigoted views. So they made that formal apology, and we got a bit of media interest from that. So so that's how it started. But it wasn't until after we left we realised that Andy Medic had been constantly on the phone trying to remove us. And so we were hoping deep down that in November, when the elections, a Victorian election came, that he would lose. And so I intently watched the numbers, and he really, he got 1.7% of the primary vote. So for someone that was in Parliament for 4 years, it was a very low primary vote.
Yeah.
So he was relying on preferences to get through, and he didn't get through.
Wow.
So he was a one-term wonder. Like I said, he did do good things for animals, and credit where credit's due. But I think, Angie, you were saying that when he got elected, it was a few weeks after he got elected 4 years ago, that he came out and said he had a trans child.
Yeah. Well, the reason that I like the Animal Justice Party, one, because I'm a vegan and a greenie and all that, it was because the Greens had been so captured by identity politics. They offered an alternative to the Greens that was focused on environmental issues, and they had human rights issues as well, around like about asylum seekers, and there's a few other things that sort of crept in that was sort of your typical lefty green kind of party. And I had a gut full of the Greens, because I used to always vote Labor and Greens, and now I can't vote for either of those. And I thought, Ripper, there's this new party full of vegans. I'm going to vote for them. And a month after the election, he releases this statement about trans rights, and then says that his kid is trans, and and all the cliches that are so offensive to us women about trans rights, trans women are women. And I'm just sitting there gobsmacked going, oh my God, I voted for this dude.
Yeah.
Like and the fact that he waited until a month after the election to reveal this, and then he said, oh, and the party's going to go, the party supports trans rights and trans liberation and all these cliches. And I was like, couldn't believe it. So
But the strange thing is, in New South Wales, where they've got 2 MPs, they solely focus on the animals. They've never ever brought any of this into anything. It's just animals. It was just Victoria. And then we noticed that he changed the colours of the party to purple, which every other state is black and white, but Victoria became purple. And he was calling him Andy's Army. So
see, I got kicked out of all the vegan groups anyway, because I'm a Terf. Like, I was on a vegan dating site, and I wouldn't put my pronouns in, and so I got booted. But I gave them a cert before I left. But what I noticed is that they were all like, hypersexualized and promoting sex work. Like this is a vegan dating site, right? And it was for all ages, but all the men would have just normal dating profiles of, them in their footy gear, them at the Melbourne Cup, not in the vegan one, but you know what I mean, like the
Yeah.
typical dating profiles. And all the women had their OnlyFans and pictures of their bits hanging
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
And it made me
Yeah.
really uncomfortable. And I thought, geez, you'd think, that particularly young people who were into animal rights and things would see the link between human exploitation and animal exploitation. But
Yeah.
that completely went over their heads.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
We know this.
that made me, and they're all members of the AGP, and they're all really politically active and standing in the streets with blood covered over them, and and protesting and whatever. But they were pro sex work and pro transgenderism. Now,
Yeah.
transgenderism is big pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
The hypocrisy of an animal rights party supporting big pharmaceutical companies and porn and human trafficking.
And
The
medicalising
disgrace.
people cutting parts of their body off. What about
Yeah,
nature? Nature's perfect. So,
yeah,
we say don't mess with nature. Look what happened. Look at climate change. This is what
yeah.
results. But, when it comes to the human species, they support it.
It
In
just doesn't make sense.
No,
So
no.
yeah, it left me feeling a bit icky. So I'm a bit of an outrider there too, as in the animal rights community. I'm like out there, and
Yeah,
I haven't got I'm politically homeless. The only place
yeah,
I feel really comfortable is among their rad fems.
yeah,
And I
that's
don't
right.
speak on behalf of any other radical feminists. But
Yeah,
that's kind of the only place where I feel really comfortable.
yeah.
But
So
then
we were
there's no
very, yeah,
pardon.
that's right. I think so many of us are politically homeless, so
Mm,
need to find it independent that you can live with. But
that
so
represents
many,
women.
yep, yep, yeah, definitely. But so we were very happy when it was finally announced. We knew that Andy was losing because I
Wow.
was keeping an eye on it, and he didn't really have a hope in hell. His primary vote was so low, he wasn't getting the preferences.
Mm.
He probably thought he was going to rocket in because of preferences, but it really surprised me that his primary vote was so low for someone that's been in politics for 4 years. The AJP really needs to think, well, we had an elected official for 4 years. Why was the primary vote so low?
Because the
Like,
only time you ever heard from Andy Medic was on the trans issue.
yeah, yeah. So when I resigned 3 weeks out from the election, it was too late to take me off the voting card. I got a
Yeah.
higher, I got higher preferences than what he did. So, what does that say?
Oh, that is gold.
Yeah.
Oh, Turf of the week.
So the
Oh,
AJP really needs
no.
to have a look at,
Oh,
yeah,
but they didn't
um,
listen to you. They're not listening to, they're listening. And this is what the Greens doing too. They're listening to their volunteers who
yeah,
have a political agenda. The people who want to hand out pamphlets for the Greens have a political agenda of their own. But they're
yeah,
not the people who are going to vote.
yeah,
So, and the
yeah,
same with Animal Justice Party. The people who are handing out your pamphlets aren't the people that you are to appease. It's the public. And the
yeah,
public don't hold radical views.
yeah. Well,
You
when we resigned, there were quite a few members where we got messages and they'd resigned. Other
Mm,
members said they were going to stay with they didn't agree with it at all, but they were staying with it because it was the only party for the animals, and they were
yeah.
hoping that, they'd see sense. But it just depends. Georgie Purcell won her seat. So she worked with Andy. Was she his advisor or something? Not sure. So
Not
I'd be
sure.
interested to see how she goes with it. I guess the good thing for her is that Andy's not in, so he won't be manipulating her.
Mm, true.
Yeah, but if they continue on the trans path, and the same with the Greens, doing outreach with IWD Brisbane Meanjin, the public overwhelmingly does not agree with gender ideology and what it
Mhm.
means for people. And that's where you really get a good sense of the way the public feels.
Mm.
And our politicians must know that
Oh, they
it's
know.
not
That's why they
happening.
know platform us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's why Shannon Fentiman doesn't want to meet with women, because
Mm.
there's no justification. But she could just listen to people and nod her head. She don't
No.
that sort of thing. But
She'll have to look you in the eye. She couldn't do it. She couldn't look you in the eye.
Yeah, yeah. So they've made a decision that they're not going to meet with women, and they just don't want to talk about it. They just can't talk about it. They don't want to talk about it. They say we're not stakeholders. They know we're stakeholders. They just cannot justify their position, in all good faith, and what's happening to kids and that sort of thing. So, and even with the sex self ID bill that was tabled on the 2nd of December and got till the 11th of January. So for submissions, and they knew then, being the Christmas break, that they wouldn't get as many submissions as what they perhaps could have. So, everything is plotted with an outcome that they're trying to achieve.
That's what they did in Victoria. They did everything on the sly.
Yeah, yeah. But, well, in Scotland, I think 2/3 of the people, of the public over there, are against the introduction. So, but how could politicians not know? They base everything on polling. So I wonder if they've ever done a poll on it, though.
They haven't. And to think that, we went through that horrible plebiscite for same-sex marriage, for, marriage equality. We went through that awful plebiscite, which brought out all the homophobes on
That's right.
that issue. And yet to strip away all of women's rights and all gay people's rights.
Yeah.
Nothing.
It's unbelievable.
They just do it.
Yeah. But so they know deep down, and I guess they think, well, they won't be in politics when there's a backlash.
Yeah. And it's about, I always keep in mind that for them it's about economic rationalism. This is part of it's about money for politicians.
Yeah.
And and the lack of transparency is deliberate.
Yeah. It's just, it's always about self-interest, is it, as well, isn't it?
And it's not going to affect them personally. Their kids are at private schools. The impact on the politicians personally is so slim compared to the average, working class normal
Unless they have to go
person.
to a public toilet and they're confronted by a terrible sight. And
I think they'd be more scared of being confronted by us, I think.
So, but they've got friends and family, someone that they know is going to be affected if it's not them directly, but that's their legacy that they have to live with. Ultimately it's
we just have to make sure the public hear when bad things happen, that the public actually hear about it. Because my fear is, and particularly the way that they're calling men women and they're fudging reality, that the things that we predict are going to happen are already happening, but we're not hearing about it.
And then Shannon Fentiman said there's no evidence of predatory men identifying as women in Australia or overseas.
The papers are full of them.
Exactly right. So I mean, either she lied or she's got the worst advisors.
She's lying.
It's just incredible. So that's her legacy. That so women get raped, children are being mutilated. That's her legacy. And you just think, I just don't know how anyone can live with themselves, and doesn't want to speak to women who are being affected, and they don't want to know about kids. It's just so sad, it really is. But these are our politicians. So, and, the Labor politicians in Queensland that don't agree with it are too afraid to voice their concerns.
Same down here in Victoria. We've even got politicians within the Labor Party who their career will be over if they speak up.
But yet in Scotland, there were politicians that were speaking up. So I wonder what the difference is. Is it, are we, what's going on with the media, with the politicians? I would never have thought that this would happen to this extent in Australia. It's just beyond belief.
It's frightening. It's actually frightening.
Yeah. The ABC will have blood on its hands.
Oh, yes.
You know, it's just, we're talking about before Sam Brinton in the Biden administration got very little. Sky News was really the only one that exposed what was going on with him, stealing the women's luggage and women's clothes and being in the Biden administration. It wasn't until he was caught a second time stealing women's luggage from the carousel at the airport that... So, you know, and then Biden recently had another drag queen attend the White House, and you just think, what's going on? You know, if you're a drag queen, well, but anyway.
Oh, look, we're talking about all these really serious things on social media, and, you know, we get thousands of shares and this and that, you know, things that to do with this whole ideology. And yet the Age will go and listen to some, you know, troll trans activist and publish something that they've just made up.
Yeah.
So how did these activist trolls get so much power with the mainstream media, and yet people who are being impacted in real life by this ideology get nothing. No.
And Ida Buttrose, she's the head of the ABC. Is she still... That's another thing, is how is Ida Buttrose allowing this to happen? What's going on? Where is this control?
It's coming from government. It's coming from high up.
Yeah. Oh, well.
And I think, who knows what happened over COVID with the influence of, you know, big pharmaceutical companies. There was a shift, I think. There was a shift of power from governments to the big companies.
Yeah.
As we all predicted when I did, you know, when we did year 12, you know, history and philosophy, we predicted that these big multinationals would one day rule the world instead of governments, because it was sort of the end stages of capitalism, you know. But to live through it, this is not what I didn't think it would be like this, you know. Even though all the sci-fi and everything predicted this, when you're actually living through it,
gender ideology is like an octopus, isn't it? All these different tentacles for different reasons. There's not just one reason why it's happening. There's a whole lot.
And that's why gender ideology is perfect, because it has got all these different tentacles. It's got, you know, its hands in all these different baskets, and people benefiting on so many different levels, and people being disadvantaged on so many different levels. And the tentacles all going at the same time is deliberate, because the public who you know, in the past has depended on the news media to present the truth and facts, is seeing all the tentacles and just going, what? You know, and we're stunned. We're too stunned to believe that any of this is actually happening and that it's true. When I tell people, they go, what have you got a YouTube channel for? Because they think that they know it's out of character for me. And I go, oh, we talk about, you know, Jen, oh, what do you slag off trans people? Well, no, we don't. We talk about, and I tell them the things that we talk about, and they're like, oh, that's not happening. And it's like, really? They just don't, they can't believe it.
But even the AGPs that are on Twitter, and they, because IWD got together for Christmas and had a Terfmas lunch, and they got hold of the photos and said they can't even have a lunch without talking about trans people. And I went, we don't actually talk about you guys. We talk about our rights, and we don't talk about any adult, how they want to identify. We don't talk about them. We talk about our rights, what's going on, and about children, and, you know, safeguarding children. We don't care how they want to identify, but they're just not taking our rights, and they're not going to do this to children.
I talk about men. I talk about men in women's spaces. The reason I'm on Twitter is because of men in women's spaces. And if trans people think it's about them, then they're admitting that they're men. That's the way I look at it.
That's
you can
right.
go to my whole Twitter feed.
Yep. So, and if 75% of them are AGPs, I reckon it's probably higher than that.
It is now,
Yeah, but they're the ones that are going to enter our spaces. Like you said, if someone's actually transitioned, if you look at Blair White, he couldn't go to a male toilet.
No.
So, you know, the ones that have transitioned and do look sort of feminine,
You wouldn't
they've
even
been
notice him
using,
in there.
yeah, they've been using facilities for years because they can't
Mm,
go into the men's toilets. So,
mhm,
and they've got no interest in oppressing us.
hmm.
But men, you know, you look at them now and they dress up and you think, oh no, you look like a scary, scary man. If I came out of the toilet and saw you, I'd have a heart attack. Even Shannon Fentiman used, I can't remember his name, but he
Oh,
looked, do you know the photo?
I saw him. Yeah.
And I thought, why would you use him if you're trying to convince women to let men like him into women's toilets?
He was a classic AGP.
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. Why couldn't she have found someone that at least looked feminine? Even,
mm.
you know, but no,
I'm
she
glad she didn't.
yeah, and I said on her, because I've been blocked from her Facebook page, um, but on her Twitter page, and I just said if I saw whatever his name was coming out of the toilets, that it would really scare me.
Mm,
But you know, so to make them feel comfortable, we have to feel uncomfortable.
mm.
And yeah, so I wonder what percentage of women actually are supporting men in women's spaces. Be
Oh, I think a
interesting.
lot until they see them in there.
Yeah, yeah. And more are coming out all of a
Yep.
sudden. So yeah, it's and it will be, well, it's never too late because we can get it changed. But
This will be a big year for us. This
yeah,
will be a big year on a whole lot of levels, and I think we can all feel that. I think
yeah,
there is a not a tension, but yeah, kind of a tension building, and some people feel it more than most.
yeah,
And yeah, and I think we really do has to come together as women
yeah,
and just
yeah.
weather the storm. And
And
it's exciting.
yeah, and also looking at what's happening overseas, like in the UK. In the US, there's so many parents speaking out. I see footage all the time on Facebook Watch, and there's so many of these parents getting up before school boards and calling for the resignation of the board. So the parents are really coming out on mass in the United States, and with drag queens as well. Protests about drag queens, the story time hour, whatever it's called. So, and then you look at the UK and you just think, no, because we're so far behind,
Mm.
you can't ignore that evidence. And it's not gonna, it may take hold for a while. Like Victoria, you've had it 2 years now, haven't you?
3.
Oh, is it 3 years?
But 2 were in lockdown, so there was no impact.
Yeah,
And during lockdown, it bred more
yeah.
because people
Oh,
were stuck on their screens.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Every time I leave my house, I see girls with no chest, like no breasts.
Oh,
Girls. And you can tell
yeah,
they've got the short haircut and they don't look like men, they look like girls with no breasts.
yeah, yeah.
And my daughter says that, last year there was maybe 2, this year there's 15, who knows? But she also said that, in her age group, my daughter's 14, that's not cool in her age group to be trans. If someone comes out, makes a big to-do about it, they laugh.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but it's not the cool kids who are doing it, is it? It's usually the kids who are that little bit more of an
Well,
outcast, or the kid that's on the spectrum and feels left out, or,
but it's good that there are kids that can see it for what it is.
mm.
So, yeah, the vulnerable ones are being caught up in it.
But well, the thing that my daughter does notice, though, there's also this that's part of this whole trans thing too, that there's a real pushback against women, girls who are vanilla. So there's
Mm,
like this real, the virgin whore dichotomy still exists in 2022 for young
yeah,
girls, where they have to make a choice between to be, frigid and vanilla, or
yeah.
to be have an OnlyFans. There's 15-year-old girls with OnlyFans. It's illegal.
Oh
So,
my
this is all part. I mean, the trans stuff and pornography goes hand in hand.
yeah, yeah,
So, so that those that aren't impacted by the gender stuff are still impacted by the porn and all the other stuff. So it's a really
yeah.
horrible time to be a teenager.
Oh,
But my
isn't it?
daughter has inherited, she's a lot like me, actually. She's inherited my sense of humor, and she's actually proud of being vanilla and boring and straight. And, so she tells people, so she
Yeah,
says,
good
yes,
on her.
I'm boring, so what? And she makes her identity, I guess. So good for
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
on her. It
Yeah,
worries me though, like for parents it's so hard, isn't it? Like
it is.
trying to make your children resilient enough
Yes.
that they can resist this cult,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think that's it. I mean, kids need boundaries. And,
Yeah,
yes, I gave my kids chocolate for breakfast on Christmas Day, but so what? But,
yeah,
when it comes to the big stuff, and they think I'm horrible, but, I do set firm boundaries with them, and I'm not going to indulge them.
yeah,
When I do make my son's toast in the morning, I complain and whinge about it and say, if you expect your future partner to make your toast every morning, they're not going to do it, and I go and
yeah,
pick up your plate and put it back in the kitchen, but I know mums who just, whatever their kid wants, they get.
yeah,
And I've never been that mum. And I think maybe that's why my kids, who are prime candidates for this ideology, never
yeah,
fell into it. My
yeah.
oldest best friend is trans, non-binary, pansexual, whatever. And and she and I get along really well, and she's like, she's almost like a little niece or something like that. She's been around for so long. And yet my daughter never fell into it, and her best friend did. And it's
That,
really interesting. But then my kids have always been around trans people, because my father-in-law transitioned. I've got friends that I've had my whole life who are transgender. And I think when you've met them and you realize that they're not the opposite sex, that.
yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah,
it. So, I think that they've never been tempted like someone who believes the lie that you actually become the opposite sex. It's like a
and I think
magic wand.
with the AGPs, they don't realise that people know trans people. So
Mm,
you know what they're like. They
yeah,
want to blend in. They don't want to oppress people or, grandstand that they're trans. So when you know a trans person, you know what they
yeah,
represent. And the AGPs do not behave, talk, look um, like a trans person.
yeah.
And when they're saying that we're transphobic, no, we're not transphobic. We're against men with sexual fetishes trying to get into women's spaces. We're against children being manipulated. We're against children being put on puberty blockers by having parts of their bodies altered, removed. But adults, they can identify as whoever they want. They can identify as a chair, I don't care. But do not try and take away our rights, our safety, our spaces. Leave us alone. And
What a,
we'll
yeah,
leave you alone.
what a wonderful way to end this episode.
The
We
last for
should,
2022.
yes, that's scary. Where are the years gone?
Yeah, like this time last year, I really knew nothing about it. Linda had told me a little bit about it because she had been on IWD Brisbane, me, Angie, and so she sort of filled me in a bit. But I was woke, what you would consider woke. I wanted to be kind. I still
Yeah,
want to be kind, but within reason.
yeah,
Being
same.
walked over isn't kindness.
Mm,
So, yeah, and then all of a sudden this year, it's been the year of the turf
it
for
has.
me. But,
It
yeah,
has.
next year it's going to
Next
be,
year.
yep,
It's going to be great. And yeah,
yeah.
oh, thank you so much for coming on today.
I
It's
think
been a busy time of year. So
yes, yes, yeah. So are you doing anything for New Year's Eve?
I'm going to bed. I do every year. I did
Yeah,
all my partying when I was young. And
yeah,
since I've been a mum, my kids have gone to their dads, so I'm going to go to bed at 10 o'clock with the cat.
yeah.
And hopefully get a really good night's sleep. I'll wear earplugs because someone will be out with the pots and pans and the fireworks.
Oh,
But yeah, so I'm in a rural area, so most people go away for New Year's because there's
oh,
nothing
okay.
happening out here. So
Yeah.
nice and quiet, and then I'll get up really early in the morning, might wander off to the Sunday market, which will still be on, and I'll be like, yeah. So I do the opposite of what most people do, which is party.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I did all that when I was young,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I value sleep. That's how you can tell how old I am. A good night's sleep, beautiful. Good feed, good night's sleep, bliss.
Yeah, I've got a friend staying over, someone that I used to work with before I retired. Her son's having a New Year's Eve party at her house,
Oh,
so
nice.
she's
Oh no.
escaping. Yeah.
Fair
So
enough.
so she'll probably be worrying about him all night, but he's pretty sensible. So,
Yeah, good,
yeah,
good.
yeah. So I doubt it. I don't think we're going to be seeing 12 o'clock.
No.
I haven't seen New Year's Eve out for probably 20 years. You just, but I am excited about 2023.
Same. Yeah,
So
so I won't be making a wish at New Year's and giving someone a kiss and going, but I definitely think for women,
yeah,
2023 is the year that we rise up.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kelly
Oh,
J
thank
King comes out. She starts off the year, I guess, with her
Yes,
tour.
yes,
So
Kelly
it's
Jo's
gonna
coming
be,
out in March, so that'll be
yeah.
interesting. She's a
Oh, but I,
divisive figure, but I think she's fabulous. I think, the fact that she's brought so many women from so many different backgrounds together,
yeah,
she should be highly commended for that. So
yeah,
yeah,
definitely. And then the IWD conference is in March, the
I'm trying to
three-day
get up for that
conference.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're going to really start off with a bang for, I think, 2023, and it's just going to keep getting better and better.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for watching too. And we'll see you next year.
Thanks, Ange.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.